In a time where 60% keyboards were much less common, the ANNE Pro was a huge success, offering that unique form factor but also featuring Bluetooth and RGB lighting at a decent price. Since then, there's been a heap of new entries, so now we have the ANNE Pro2, which replaces its predecessor and hopefully improves on it. Same font or typeface that isn't the cleanest, but it also isn't the worst. And these are also made from 1.2mm thick PBT plastic and are double shot. So the legend is another piece of plastic and will never fade away. Having backlit keycaps means that we keep that sweet RGB lighting. The colors are vibrant and bright, and the transitions are smooth with the legit RGB color spectrum. There's a couple of colors and effects available on board with FN2 plus F9, however we can further play around with the lighting in the software. So as said, this is a 60% keyboard, having just the main area of the keyboard with 61 keys. But don't worry, just as always, we have all the other keys and functions packed onto other layers. Many people like 60% keyboards for their super compact size and having everything in close reach. But that same trait can be a negative to others who prefer dedicated keys such as dedicated arrow keys. So by default, we do have the function row on top, the nav cluster, which includes home and page up and down, etc. on the right hand side, and the arrow keys on WASD and IJKL. And these are accessed via the FN key. Although you'll notice that we have two FN keys labeled FN1 and FN2, meaning that we actually have more layers to play around with, which we'll see. Unfortunately, I only have the Gateron Reds in mind, being similar to the Cherry MX Reds. The Kalebox Reds are also pretty similar, again being a light linear switch. So you'd probably have to get the Kalebox Browns for tactile or whites for clickies to experience something different. I've built keyboards with both of these key switches, so you can see my thoughts on those if you want. However, recently it's been found that the Kalebox switches do have problems with stressing keycap stems and breaking them. Although I don't think it's much of a problem if you're not constantly changing them. They've since worked towards fixing this, but I don't think those changes are in effect with these boards or this batch at least, but who knows for the future. I'll link some of the info in the description below. The stabilizers are actually decent. They still have some rattle there, but they are way better than the absolute trash the original ANNE Pro had. The last major feature of the keyboard is its Bluetooth 4.0 wireless capability. First, make sure the keyboard is switched on at the bottom. On the 1 to 4 keys, we have 4 Bluetooth buttons in which each holds a device. Therefore, we can pair this up to 4 devices at a single time. To connect the keyboard to a device, hold FN2 and one of the 4 keys for 5 seconds, and then the key will start flashing. And then just pair it on the device side, and it's that easy. The performance seems pretty good. There's always going to be the slightest of delays, but I only used it for casual use on wireless mode anyway, as my desktop doesn't have Bluetooth. As for battery life, they state that it lasts for 8 hours on a charge. Unfortunately, due to my lazy ways and the fact that I can't use Bluetooth on my laptop, I can't back that up. To take the keyboard apart, you'll need to remove these pesky Torx head screws. Here's the keyboard itself. We have a nice 1.5mm steel mounting plate, which contributes to much of its weight. Looking at the PCB, and it is real clean. The solder joints look clean. Each key and component is labeled nicely, and yeah, it just looks good. And we have some rubber pieces here for more protection for the battery, so it won't get pierced. Here's the plastic case, and it's again very similar. We have our 1900 mAh battery, which is also protected by some foam. So overall, very good protection for the battery, which is great. There's some ribbing on the bottom for reinforcement, and the standoffs look solid and have brass inserts in them. And also being just one piece, it's super easy to paint if you wanted to give it some color. So overall, on the outside, it doesn't look like much of a change, and I'd wish they'd freshen up the design a bit, but that's fine as it still looks pretty good. But what makes up for that is all the improvements below the surface. The introduction of the Kale box switches gives us more options, but there is that keycap stress issue, but I think for the most part it's fine. Definitely try out the box browns or box whites if you want something a bit more unique. The major improvement in the software is a huge plus for me. It far exceeded my expectations. It's easy to use, works perfectly well, and just looks so legit. And then the little things like the on and off switch, the improved stabilizers, USB Type-C, the extra blank keycaps, the detailed downloadable manual, all of this just adds even more value to the board. In my eyes, it truly is a worthy successor to the original. It maintains its middle of the pack price range, not being as cheap as these other budget 60% boards, but being much better. And it's not as much as like the Vortex Poker 3. So for an easy, affordable 60% keyboard, I definitely recommend this.